Hello and welcome to this demonstration series. My name is Jason Paul. I'm the Managing Director for Apt Innovations. Today we're here at Savile Motorhomes in Lisburn, Northern Ireland, where by using our new product Floe, I'd like to show you how you can drain down your own motorhome without having to pay someone to do it for you. So let's get started. Now, draining down your motorhome has got two distinct advantages. The first being in preparation for winter to avoid those nasty breakages through our most recent hard winter frosts. And the second, of course, is during the season itself to free up that old stale and stagnant water. Now, many people have used various methods such as blowing down through the taps or driving home with the dump valves open and hoping to shake that water loose. But what we've found through our research is that there is no real way of measuring how much water you're actually losing, or more importantly, how much old water has been left within those lines to cause potential damage. There are other reasons why these methods may fail, such as the motorhome may be sitting on an incline, or by draining the dump valve it may have created a vacuum down through the lines. So the objective of this demonstration is to show you that just by using a little bit of compressed air, what we'll be able to do is blow all of that water out, leaving your lines completely dry. So the first thing we need to do to understand the water system is to have a look at this diagram. To get water into the motorhome, the tank is filled from the outside, and this is normally done with either a typical garden hose or a suitable adapter. Water then travels from the water tank into the pump, which pushes the water into the system. Now at this point, sometimes you may notice that there's a thicker flexible pipe that enters the left of the pump and a thinner pipe exiting the right of the pump. Now, looking at this on a larger picture, the pipe coming from the pump travels further into the system, where it then splits into two. The top branch travels carrying cold water onto the taps in the kitchen, the shower, and finally the wash hand basin in the bathroom, as well as any other outlets such as outside showers, etc. The lower branch travels as cold into the water heater, where the water is heated and travels onto the taps. Now, the nature of using Floe is to push compressed air into a system, and in turn that air will push the water out of the taps. However, using Floe as we would on static or touring caravans would mean pushing that air in from the outside. Now, unfortunately, there are vents in the tank, so any air pushed in would escape through those vents. Therefore, our solution to this problem is to bypass the tank by placing a shutoff valve after it, which will seal it off altogether. Now, we can place the shutoff before or after the pump, and this means simply cutting the pipe and pushing on the push-fit shutoff valve. This is a very simple DIY procedure, but of course if you don't feel comfortable doing this, a service engineer at your local dealership will be more than qualified to do it for you at a small charge. Now, after fitting the valve, we still need to get access to the water system, and that's where our second connection comes in. We simply clip the pipe and fit the T adapter on the tap side of the shutoff, and of course this gives us access with our Floe device. Seen here on the bigger picture, you can see where these two components are fitted, but although we suggest fitting the shutoff valve as close to the tank as possible, the T adapter can be fitted anywhere that is easily accessible in the motorhome, so long as it is fitted on the cold line, because when air is pushed in, that air will travel through the water heater and push out the water from the hot taps also. Now, how we intend to carry out this drain down procedure is by using our new Floe motorhome drainage kit. And what we have here on the right hand side is our patented Floe device. On the left hand side at the top is a shutoff valve, and at the bottom is a T adapter. What you'll also find in the pack is a demonstration DVD, and what that will do is explain how to fit the apparatus and also how to carry it down. There are instructions and some cautions on the back, and we very much suggest that you read those thoroughly. So how do we intend to get the water out of this lovely new motorhome? Well, by using our new patented Floe device. Now, this end is going to connect to your water system via one of your cold water lines, and this end is connected to an air supply via a foot pump or a little 12-volt compressor that you could plug into the cigarette lighter of your motorhome. What we're going to do is we're going to build up a little bit of pressure inside that water system, a little bit like putting air into a balloon. Once pressure has been put into the system and you release a tap inside the motorhome, that water is going to be pushed out. Now, the beauty of this system, if it is connected to the cold water line, what it will do is it will actually go through your water heater as well and push on to the hot taps. So therefore, any water that is contained within the cold water lines and the hot water lines will be removed. And we need to fit two other components into the water system as well. The first would be this little shut-off valve. This needs to be fitted after the water tank so that when we do push air into the system, we can shut this off and the air doesn't get through to the water tank itself. The reason for that is that your water tank has vents in it which stops vacuum occurring whenever you turn on your water taps. Now, if we were to push air into the tank and it escapes through the vent, it's a little bit like a hole being in the balloon and we won't be able to pressurize that air. So that shuts off the tank. The next thing we need to fit is this little T adapter, and this will fit onto the cold water line, probably somewhere on the cold line that's readily accessible. So that what we can do is then take the Floe device and screw it on to the adapter itself and then connect your air line to it. So the first thing we need to do is fit our shut-off valve. We'll put that close to the pump and then we'll find a place to fit that T. So let's go and do that now. Now what you'll need to do before carrying out any work to your water system is to turn off your onboard pump, and that should stop any excess water from pumping out whenever you cut into the lines to fit the adapters. So we'll just turn it off at the main control panel. As part of the drain down, it's necessary to open the dump valve and drain the water heater. Once that's drained, make sure all of the taps are turned off in the kitchen, the shower and the bathroom wash hand basin. Now, I'd like to show you how to fit the Motorhome Kit. What we're going to do is fit the shut-off valve here and the T adapter underneath. The shut-off valve, what we want to do is place it somewhere between the cold water tank and the pump on the blue line. Now, what you'll find is that most UK motorhomes have a blue pipework system within them. Now, it's a 12mm semi-rigid pipework, and what that will do is just simply push fit into the shut-off valve. Now, what we need to do is to cut the pipe. So what I would recommend you use is something like this, a pair of pipe cutters out of a plumber's merchants, or indeed a sharp pair of secateurs. Now, what you can do, quite simply, cut the pipe and have the two ends. Now, what you do then is just place the pipe and push it home, and that's it. That's a push fit connection. Now, there's a little lug here, and what you can do if you need to remove the pipe to cut a little bit more off, and it's better to cut a little bit at a time, is just pull that lug back and you can remove that pipe again. Okay, some Continental motorhomes have this, which is a more flexible, thicker pipe. It's a braided pipe, something similar to a garden hose. Same thing applies, just use the snips again and cut. Now, the push fit connections won't work for these, but what we do sell as well is a Continental motorhome conversion kit. Now, what that is just a simple little pipe with straight edge to it and a barbed end to it as well. Now, what you can do is just place that straight end into the shut-off valve and push that home. Then what you can do is then fit the barbed end into the pipe. Now, you may wish to use a little bit of washing up liquid or a hairdryer just to soften the end off the hose, and then you can push that home like so. Now, we found the location of the water pump, and it's right under this bed at the back of the motorhome. And what we want to do now is fit the little shut-off valve so that will stop any water or air going to the water tank, or indeed coming from the water tank. Now, if we take a look at this picture, what you'll see is that there is a blue line that comes from the water tank, enters the pump on the left hand side, then the blue line comes out at the right hand side, and that blue line will then split into two. The left hand branch will move on to all of the cold taps in the motorhome, and the right hand branch will go to the water heater, where the water is then heated and then go to all of the hot taps and showers, etc. in the motorhome. So what we want to do now is fit that shut off valve. Okay, so that's the shut-off valve fitted. As you can see by this picture, we have fitted it to the left-hand side. That would be the input part to the pump. It doesn't really matter. Some pumps will have a thicker hose on the left-hand side and a thinner hose on the right. Choose whichever one, and I'll explain that later on, that it doesn't actually matter which side you put it to. So now that that's fitted, the next thing we want to do is to fit the Retro T adapter. Now, this is obviously for connection to our Floe device. Now, one thing that I would recommend to you is that you put this somewhere on the cold line, but that it's easily accessible. Now, that might be in a cupboard somewhere in the bathroom. This particular example, we've identified a place, as you can see here, underneath a linen basket. So now that we've identified a handy place, let's get that fitted. So now that that's fitted, you can see that it's quite accessible, and you can see there that I can turn it on and turn it off quite easily. Now, one thing I will say to you is that on normal everyday operating of your motorhome. What you want is the shut off to be turned to the on position to allow water to come from your water tank. But in your retro T, what you want to do is have that switch to the off position so that water in a normal everyday doesn't actually pour out of that adapter. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is show you just how easy it is to carry out a drain down. Now when attaching Floe, what you're going to find is that you have a little connector here, a typical hose type connector, and what you can do is pull the sheath back on this and the two parts will come apart. Now what you'll find is that you have a 3/4 inch connection, and the beauty of that is that that can be connected to, say, a power hose or an outside tap, and you can drain down a home or holiday home. What you'll also find here is that you have a little green nut, and that's a 1/2 inch connection, and that's what we're going to screw onto our adapter. Now the beauty of this is that once you get that screwed on and it's a nice firm fit, what you can do is just leave it there, and then whenever you wish to do a drain down, you can just connect on your Floe just like this. So let's get that connected. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to talk to you about is how do we get air into Floe and through into the system. Well, on Floe we have a typical car or bicycle type valve, so something like the old trusty foot pump would do, as long as you have an accurate gauge. We have this type of bicycle pump with a connection on the end of it. You can use a typical little 12-volt tire compressor, the sort that plugs into the cigarette lighter of the car. We also have this handheld device that if you pull the trigger on it, it acts something like a cordless drill, and there's a gauge on the back of it there. Something that I use, and it's just handy to have, is this battery pack type compressor. It has jump leads on the side of it, and it's just a very handy thing to have around. Now the one thing that it does have on the back of it here is there's a digital gauge and an on off switch, and what we can do here is just pull out the valve type connection. And that brings us on to another important point. What sort of pressure do we put into the system? Well, whenever you turn on your taps inside the motorhome, what will happen is the water will come out under a certain amount of pressure, and that pressure is gauged in bar, so 1 bar, 2 bar, etc. Now 1 bar is the equivalent of 15 psi, and that's what we want to use. So making sure that you have an accurate gauge, just by pushing 15 psi in, it keeps it nice and safe. The onboard pump is only capable of taking up to 20 psi of pressure, so we want to make sure that we stay around the 15. So let's get the compressor connected and we'll do our first drain down. So now that we're back in the bedroom again, you may remember that we fitted the shutoff valve beside the pump. Now that was left in the open position, so for everyday use water would be able to come from the water tank and through to the water system. We're going to push compressed air into that system, and we don't want that air to go through to the tank, so we need to turn that to the off position. Also, as we drain the water heater using the dump valve, the compressed air that we're going to push in is actually going to travel through the cold line until it goes to the water heater, through the water heater and on to the hot taps. So we want to make sure that that dump valve is now turned off. Now you may remember whenever we fitted the T adapter, we had left it in the off position, again for everyday use, so that water could just travel past it and on to the taps and the shower, etc. What we want to do, now that Floe is connected and the compressor is connected, we want to put that to the on position. So now that the system is sealed, what we want to do is connect up our compressor, and as you can see here, we've fitted the air line to Floe. So now that everything is connected, we're now ready to carry out our first drain down. Now I'd like to just describe the procedure to you. What we're going to do is build up pressurised air into the system, and when we go to our first tap, the pressurised air will push that water out of that particular tap. We then close off the tap and then build up pressure one more time, and then open the tap that's next to it. So it doesn't really matter whether you start with the hot or the cold. I just like to do them. I'll do the kitchen first, then I'll move on to the bathroom for the wash hand basin, and then I'll do the shower. But you must drain the hot and the cold separately, because there are 2 pipes leading to those particular taps, and you need to drain each pipe individually. So now that the compressor is built up to 15 psi, we're now ready to drain our first tap. Now I'm in the kitchen here, and what I've done is just turned the tap all the way to the hot side, and we're going to drain the hot first of all. So what I would recommend is that you carry a little cloth so that you can hold it over the front of the tap, because remember that the air is actually chasing the water out, so whenever all the water comes out of this particular pipe there will be quite a large spit, and it basically just stops the water from splashing around. So let's do that now. Okay, so the compressor's built back up to 15 psi, so we can now empty the cold tap. So we'll just push it all the way to the cold, and remember, using our cloth, put it over the tap and release. Okay, so that's the hot and the cold both dry. We'll just move on to the bathroom wash hand basin. Okay, so the pressure is now built up to 15 psi, so we'll just turn this tap all the way to hot, use your cloth over the end, and we can drain. Okay, that's that tap dry. We'll just pressurize again and do the cold. Okay, so it's important that we do the shower, so we've compressed up one more time to 15 psi. We'll turn the shower all the way to hot, lift down our shower head just to help the water push out, and we'll turn it on. Okay, so that's the hot drain down. What we'll do is just close that off again, and we'll compress up one more time and then do the cold. So that's the system almost drained, but you may remember that we fitted the shutoff valve to the left of the pump. Well, what we would recommend is that you build up pressure in the system one last time with your compressor, and then you turn that shutoff valve to the open position. What that will do is it will push any water that was trapped between the shutoff valve and indeed the cold water tank. It will push that back down into the tank. What we would then recommend is that you obviously drain down that tank to get rid of that cold water if you're laying up for a period of time. Also, as a first time use, you should unscrew or disconnect the filter bottle beside the pump just to make sure that there's no water trapped inside, as these can be prone to breaking in a frost. Finally, and this is imperative, if you're laying up for the winter, what you need to do is leave your taps all in the on position. Now, if you have mixer taps, what we would recommend is that you actually put them between the hot and the cold. Just leave it in the middle, but you leave them on the open position. Now, we'd recommend that you do that for the kitchen, also the wash hand basin in the bathroom, and finally the shower. And that's it. The motorhome kit is fitted, the drain down has been carried out, and that should keep you going through the winter months without your pipes freezing or any vital components getting broken. It's also a good way for every once in a while just to get rid of that old stale water. So I'd like to thank Savile Motorhomes for their very, very kind participation in making this film, and I'd like to wish you all the very best with your motorhome, and thank you for watching.